we just need help.
Yeah, so my first, introduction to convenient urgent care, they were providing masks and supplies for people who didn't have supplies during COVID. And I went to pick them up and was going to take them around to some of the local areas. And I ran into a brother named Ijaz Saeed. And as I began to talk to Ijaz, it was very, very clear that this brother had a vision for community service. Oftentimes, when you have urgent cares in a situation that they're not necessarily doing a prevention or education. He came up with the term a home of the smart patient, and I understand what that means. It means that people really want to be in tune about their health, but at the same time, they also want to be in tune about the people who are providing health. This is a very organic relationship. And little did I know, a year or so later, I would actually have to call on their services when I was in dealing with some physical trauma, if you will. And I have to say, they held my hand and they took me through the process. The offerings of telehealth, the offerings of being able to walk in consistent. I was in pretty bad shape, but they treated me like I was the president of the United States, not that one, Obama. Okay, I'm joking. But what I want to say is the professionalism, the dedication, the care, compassion, and the consistency, all the things I just named, makes convenient urgent care the space you want to go to. 3 locations in the Houston area: Cypress, Pasadena, and Parker Road in Houston. But I want to say the overall conceptual understanding of convenient urgent care is that they care for their patients, even when the patients don't know how to care for themselves. Check them out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. I'm comedian Preacher Moss. Hope everybody's doing well, having a blessed day. Listen, we're here, brothers and sisters. It seems like we just started Ramadan, but here we are towards the end of it. Yesterday, our show was feeling kind of a Ramadan way, and we talked about that in the aspect of what it means and how our hearts have been opened and things like that. Today's show is not that, but it is in the space of understanding that we have fiduciary responsibility to speak truth to power, and this will be what that episode is. That's number one. Number two is I want to give a shout out to brother Imam Abu Qadir Al-Amin out at San Francisco. Had some issues. My brother had a stroke while he was at the hospital. We are hoping that Allah blesses him and encourages him and strengthens him and gives him shifa to give him that strong voice back. I love you, brother. I don't know who's watching this, but I love you for the sake of Allah, and I love you for being my big brother. I hope that you're doing much better. And shout out to everybody that's kept me updated. Brother Ibrahim Moss, Bilal Mustafa, Bilal International, and a whole assortment of people. Thank you so much for keeping me updated. That's number one. That's a long number one. Number two, we, after tomorrow, will be off the air. So we're going to take a small hiatus because, when you're doing the shout out show, it takes a lot. We're doing 30 days in a row. So we're going to take a 1-2 week hiatus. Sister Satana will be in charge of that. So we won't be back next week, Wednesday, but possibly the week after that as we kind of recalibrate. We want to be able to get back to our format. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're feeling better about ourselves, getting our rest because, Sister Tana doesn't say this. I know that when we're doing the show during Ramadan, it just takes a special type of effort to make sure the show gets out. Okay. So let me get to the spark of the show. Today's show is basically gun control versus gun culture. Gun control versus gun culture. And why I chose this because we recently had the shooters arrested from what happened in Dadeville, Alabama with the shooting at the Sweet 16 party. The two young, they weren't gentlemen, they're teenagers. 2 black teenagers, brothers, one 17, one 16. Both of them have been arrested in conjunction with the shooting, in relationship to the shooting, and you should know they're going to be tried as adults. Effectively, their lives are over if they're found guilty. But we do need to talk about this whole idea of gun control and gun culture. Some people say gun rights and gun culture. neither one of them give us what we want, which is gun peace. So today I'm going to talk about the connection to these two, but we're going to talk about gun peace. And I'm going to give us a little bit of a chronological walk through how we got here. So you need to pay attention because I don't do this often, but I'm going to do the chronological walk of how we got here. And then you are able to make a better decision about what you're seeing and how you protect yourself in this particular environment. Okay? That's the news on that. Had a blessed day today. An extremely blessed day today. My mom's best friend, Miss Eleanor, came by the house. Let me give you a little backstory. They hadn't seen each other due to illness. You know, my mom had a small stroke. Miss Eleanor had some health issues, and she wound up having a small stroke. They've been out. You're talking about people who are like sisters connected at the hip. All of a sudden, they couldn't see each other. They couldn't visit each other due to the hospital rules and rehab and being in different places at different times. But the love was strong. So as they came over, and you know, your boy just got out of the way because that conversation between grown folks had nothing to do with me. As they enjoyed each other, it was fun, and I took a little video to actually start off the shout out show. So to Miss Eleanor, we love you. We make dua for you, but today we saw you, and as a part of seeing you, we decided to make it an archive of the shout out show. Go ahead and roll that Satan, and we'll get to our show. Don't you guys move.
Hey.
Say hello, shout out show from Miss
Hello,
Eleanor.
shout
Coming
What
on.
episode?
This is episode 724, but this is
Juice what?
this is Miss Eleanor on the left and Mama Son on the right.
Hey!
They haven't been able to see each other for a little bit due to illness, but Allah is the greatest. God is merciful at all times.
All
And now
praises to Allah.
You are seeing them back in full effect.
Yep.
All your prayers and du'as from my buddies. I appreciate it. And look at them right now. Now let's get to the show. All right, everybody, we're back. Shout out to Sister Tana. Sister Tana, I thought you froze on the thing, so I hate so that's my fault. We'll work it out. You're on the ones and twos. I think I will recuse myself from the back end moving forward. So we're going to welcome Sister Tana back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We missed you on that day, but we appreciate you being here. So we start off on a good note. Also, want to give a shout out. Sister Ree made it to Michigan safely with her and Derek and Dwan. Glad that thank you for letting me know you got there and celebrating her mother who passed almost 20 years ago, Miss Hollenquist. So duas to her in this life and the next, Miss Hollenquist. Okay. So Reed said, hello, family. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you, Sister Reed. We appreciate you shouting you out. Shout out to Mama Son, who was all up in the video being loud. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We like it when you're loud. We miss it when you ain't talking and strutting your stuff. Shout out to Miss Eleanor as well. She says, happy greetings, SOS family. We appreciate that. Next up, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh to my main man, Altaf Rashid, Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, our Canadian envoy to the show. Altaf, what'd you eat for your virtual iftar, man? You never let us know. You got to hit us back and let you know. And same thing with you, Brother Bilal. I'll get to you in a minute. Thank you so much for coming on the show, beloved. Tuning all the way in from Toronto, Ontario. We appreciate that. Like I said, he's official Canadian envoy to the show. can't have a show that goes across the border without his approval. Okay, next up, my beloved brother Bilal Salahuddin, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and mentioning his queen, Sister Sonia Dalton Salahuddin. I hope you enjoyed yesterday, man. We put the grandson on the show. It was pretty fun, man. A really fun clip. Thank you for sharing that with us. Again, brother, we appreciate you being on the show as well. Hope everything's going all right down there in H-Town. Good to see you. Next up, my main man. He started out Eric, we turned him to and now he's the Big E coming from South Carolina. Assalamu alaikum. Well, excuse me. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Beloved, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate you. Let us know what you did for that iftar, man. Make sure you ain't spending on pork rinds and Kool-Aid, brother. Gotta let us know what you spending on. Okay, next up. That's it. Our beloved EP, Sister Satana Whitfield. Thank you so much again. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And let us know what you did for your virtual iftar too, sister. We appreciate it. So cool. We're ready to go. Let's go and switch up that. Let's get to the title card. There you go. Gun safety versus gun culture. You have two things now that are out there in gun safety and gun culture. Let me give you a couple of things that have happened in the news. In a rather quick succession, we've had a shooting of a young black boy that rang the doorbell. White man came out, shot him in the head, and then stood over and shot him. Alhamdulillah, he still lived. That was in Kansas City, Missouri area. At the same time, in upstate New York, you had some college students in upstate New York turn into the driveway of somebody by mistake. In the effort to turn around, someone came out of the house, a 65-year-old white man, came out and shot someone, killing the driver, fatally. And this was a white lady, a young white woman. Then on top of that, before that, we had the Alabama shootings, which they're talking about 4 people killed with almost 30 people injured by gunfire. And you have the arrest of the suspects, 2 black youths, 117, 116, they're brothers. Then, recently in Texas, you had cheerleaders who come from Austin and Houston to do cheerleading like 3 times a week. They got back to a place called Elgin outside of Austin, Texas. Cheerleader went to the wrong car, got in the wrong car thinking it was her car. She got out, got in her car. The driver of the car got out and shot her. Didn't kill her, but shot her, even though she said, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." What does all this have to do with gun safety and gun culture? One, there's no really gun safety. In Alabama is the one of the 10, I think it's the 10th state that has the most guns. Not only that, don't be fooled. Not only that, they also advocate where you can have an open carry and you don't need a permit. There's no background checks. There's no felonies, and we're not checking for felonies or anything like that, but you're allowed to have it. I don't know the full story down in Houston. Well, it was in Houston, I believe. No, it was in Austin. I'm sorry. But this young girl who was defined by her gymnastics skills as a miracle because she was born with one lung, who pleaded and apologized for making a mistake. All the people that were shot, with the exception of the youth that were at the Sweet 16 party in Alabama, all of them made mistakes. So what does this mean? Because the legal part of this is coming up now, and I think everybody needs to be aware of this. Also, let me reiterate that in the state of Texas, the governor is advocating for a man to be pardoned for shooting somebody who was taking part in a Black Lives Matter rally. This off-duty cop decided that, I'm threatening, I'm going to shoot people. What are you doing at a Black Lives Matter rally? Besides, the case was already litigated, and there's a plethora of evidence that says that you went there with the intention of doing malicious harm. What does all this mean? It means that there's a culture out there that we ought to be aware of. Years ago, and we may not remember because there's just been so much gun violence. Years ago, there was a young man named Mike Brown. He was in Ferguson, Missouri. And Mike Brown was shot by a policeman. He was unarmed. He was unarmed. But the policeman shot him because he felt that I was threatened by his big size, that Mike Brown was a big guy. He could hurt me. So as a result, he killed somebody who was unarmed. Brothers and sisters, you got a culture problem. And the culture problem is now that people are taking advantage of laws that were questionable to begin with. Now, there's two laws you need to be really, you got to be available for. The first one is stand your ground. And stand your ground is chronological if you go back to Trayvon Martin. That George Zimmerman felt threatened by Trayvon Martin, thus it justified him killing this young youth, a young youth who was unarmed. He had Skittles and juice, right? And a hoodie. What does that mean? It means that in Florida, they created a situation scenario where people can subjectively figure out whether you're going to harm them or not. That they can be preemptive in their activities, that they feel you're going to harm them. So they are, in some regards, let's just say, they're gambling. They're predicting that you're going to harm them. And as a result, you've had all of these mass shootings. The culture has become the fact that people feel that when I have a gun on my hip or in my holster, I have a right to shoot somebody. That I have, according to the Constitution, the right to defend myself. But here's the thought. What happens when you really are not in a place where you have to defend yourself? That things are, for lack of a better word, peaceful. That the itching that you have to use the gun, and this is important, the itching that you have to use the gun is the thing that makes you preemptive to use it in unnecessary shows of force. Now, I don't show many videos, and I'm not going to show this video, but there was a young man, of course, you heard about him, shot 40 times. 40 times, hit 26 times. You know, it went to a grand jury and they decided that this man somehow had provoked the police. Therefore, it's okay. He was killed. He was unarmed. He ran off. They said it was a traffic stop. Another thing, why do people get killed in so many traffic stops? I don't know. Actually, I do know, but that's another show. So here's my thing. If you're having all of this stuff go around, pay attention now. Where does it come from? When we talked about Ferguson, we talked about the fact that there was an economy in Ferguson that allowed for the things that happened. There was an economy that oppressed, there was an economy that oppressed those who were in Ferguson, Missouri. And this will be mostly Black and Latino. That the arrest and constant oppression wasn't a part of the economy. It fueled police budgets. It fueled judicial budgets. To have a court that's vibrant, you have to have people that are being tried. And so you have people who will be giving vagrancy tickets, people will be giving loitering tickets, people giving parking tickets, parking at a park, doing barbecues, got a ticket. Now, this is really important because when you go back, there's two divergent ideas. Number one, that you had to stand your ground rule. Now, here's the deal. The stand your ground rule does not work for Black people. Don't work for Latino people. The Latino brother that shot that cheerleader, I don't know who your lawyer is, or if your family's watching, get hold, you go into prison. You just can't get out of a car and shoot somebody after they ask you not to shoot them, after they make a mistake. Now, we talk about this in terms of stand your ground, but there's another rule that you need to be aware of. And that rule, brothers and sisters, is the castle rule. That my home is my castle, which goes to the other spate of shootings that I was talking about. The young Black boy who goes to pick up his brothers, his twin brothers, makes a mistake, goes to the wrong house. Guy rings the doorbell, man shoots him. That's going to be brought up, the castle rule. Not stand your ground, but the castle rule. And it will be the same thing for the young white girl who was shot in upstate New York for turning to the wrong driveway. And while she's trying to leave, gunshot rings out and she gets killed. We're going to be right back here on the ShOUT Show. Don't you move. We got a lot to talk about.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, we need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time, but leaders dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh.
All right, we got a quick note to our EP. Can you put that up, Sister Satana? There you go. That's right, Sister Satana. We just want to let you know that you are loved and appreciated on the Shout Out Show. So for all of those who want to know how the Shout Out Show has survived all these years, Sister Satana, hats off. Well, I ain't gonna take my hat off because I'll probably blow out the camera all this gray on my head. Okay. So let's get back to gun safety versus gun culture. Gun culture requires gun safety, and gun safety is not there. We can talk about the NRA. We can talk about the NRA. We can talk about GOP. We can talk about all the people that are gun hawks. But here's the thing that you have to understand. That there's an absence of gun peace. See, the idea of a firearm keeping the peace is a very, very diluted concept. There's really no such thing as gun peace. There's gun participation, there's gun violence, but gun peace is something we don't talk about. Gun peace is the fact that you're not having to take your pistol out in the first place. It's replaced by dialogue. It's replaced by let me find out what the person's intentions are, as opposed to trying to figure it out on my own. Now, before we went to the break, I started talking about the castle rule. Now, this is really, really important because the castle rule says that inside of my house, if I feel like I'm threatened, I can go outside of my house and deliver deadly force. This is what happened to the young man in Kansas City. This is what happened to the young white girl in upstate New York. The castle rule is something you have to worry about because now there are people in their homes, and we've talked about this repeatedly. They don't have people skills. They don't have connections, engagement to a lot of folks in the real world. They are in a space now where they can, in their minds, concoct situations and scenarios whereby I must act with deadly force. Now, the two culprits of the home shootings, one is 84 white male, the other one is like 65 white male up in New York. Now, there's something really, really interesting about the fact that they're older white males. And the thing is, and I could be totally wrong, inshallah I'm not, but at 84 and 65, it would seem that you have cultivated, and this is important, you've cultivated what could be a fear or a hatred of African Americans and Latinos, or fear and hatred in some regards of people who don't think like you. You know, I believe the interesting case is going to be what happened up in New York, because this is the white male shooting into the car of other white women. And I think what they're going to find out is this whole idea, this whole new paradigm of territorialism is becoming lethal. You know why? Because we watch things on television and we may discount them as, oh, that's just something on TV. That's not, no, these are things that we're constantly bombarded. We're bombarded with these things. Pardon me, I'm getting a little frustrated, but we're bombarded with these things, and it comes through social media, it comes through your TV, it comes through your phone and things like that. And depending on what it is that you're listening to, it can affect you. It can affect you. Oslo, Norway. Well, not Oslo, but in Norway, you had someone who read Mein Kampf and some stuff from Trump papers over here, and he goes to a scout camp and kills, murders Muslims. He did this. And the way he did it was he claimed that in there standing that he was standing his ground. Well, what happens when your ground is here and you expand it? I'm going to stand my ground. My ground is here, but to make my point, I'm going to extend. I'm expand it. I'm going to expand it. I'm going to expand it. I'm going to expand it. And you take a group or psychology or a group thing that thinks the same thing, they keep expanding, 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 expanding. Brothers and sisters, we have a problem. Because now we don't know who's in that space. In the city of Oklahoma, the governor just had to apologize for a police chief, a commissioner, and a judicial official, I believe, who were talking about the good old days when you could string up black people and shoot people. And they weren't even talking about, they were mad at two white newspaper people, but it somehow carried over to what they could do with black folks back in the day. Beat them up and throw them in a cell. And I'm like, this is what we're talking about. And the only layer that you put over top of that is even more problematic is that they have a gun on their holster and the law that says that you can use it under all these conditions. You need to establish conditions under which you can't use your gun, that you can't unload your firearm, that when you go to an emergency, the first thing you don't do is that you don't grab your hip and go to your holster. And I can't talk about policing issues and things like that. That's not my business. But I have to say that these are the things that are troublesome going forward. You see, back when Trayvon Martin was murdered, and by incident, that's when Black Lives Matter started. They tried to make it a Black Lives Matter issue, couldn't get traction because people were really dying and they were down into this whole aspect of something is happening here that's criminal. And you didn't have the push of social media, but that's off to the side. But what is important is that they put a rule out there called stand your ground. An example that I got about what happens if you stand your ground, but you keep expanding your ground. That's why we're minus one black youth today. And while his killer just walks around and does what he wants to, these are the laws that are put out there that are disadvantageous to African Americans because we don't move that way. Studies will show you that most African Americans don't have a lot of firearms. And if they do, they don't use them. It's the understanding that the world is in such a place that I better have one just in case. Because as my mom says, you never know. Now, here's two things I want you to remember before you get out. They'll be in the news soon enough. Stand your ground, the castle rule. Stand your ground, the castle rule. And what I'm saying is, both of these laws are a territorial answer to be able to carry your gun wherever you want to. If you're in the state of Texas, it's an open carry law. People making barbecue sandwiches and pork chops with a gun on their hip. What, you going to shoot people if they take a pork chop? My point. It's not that. It's just I'm sending out a signal. What kind of signal are you sending out? If I'm a peaceful person, what does that say with you with a gun on the hip? Well, it says, well, maybe that you're not a peaceful person. It says that maybe that if something breaks out, conversation not the first thing you're going to reach for. That being said, I think it's important and it's an imperative if we start asking questions because sooner or later, the ability to carry a gun, the ability to fire a gun is going to come back on us. Sadly, 4 people were killed in Alabama. 4 young black people. 3 of which were going to college. The other one was working. He was 23. We're not going to talk about gun violence in the context of them. We're going to look at the 2 young guys who are being tried as adults, and this is going to be an open and shut case. We're not going to talk about their guns because their guns are not going to fall under the rule of stand your ground or even the castle rule. Those 2 things are class structure rules to be able to carry guns. These kids are going to be drive-by kids. They're going to be savages. They're going to be violent. And they're going to spend the rest of their life, if they're lucky, in Alabama prison. This is a shout-out show. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care.